guys, you know I talk about the offensive line. I believe it's the root of everything. It's not the final determiner, but it's the root of everything on defense. Is the defensive line. I did a podcast about showing Brady speed of throw, not just him, the offense in response to certain things. And I showed Tua and the offensive design in response of things. And then I showed Marino how Marino was subject with all that talent to the level of the offensive line. Dwight Stevenson injured. Offensive line talent took a huge hit. His production took a huge hit. The addition of Webb and Sims, the talent level rose, and so did Marino. So big and small offensive line play determines not only the quarterback's production, doesn't fully determine it, but a better quarterback can add more with a lesser line. A lesser quarterback does less with a less line and needs a better line to get production. But the philosophy from the OC, the schemes, and how they project what they want to do on game day is all based around the production of the blocking, whether it's in the run game or the pass game. So there's another element that I want to get into today that's a big positive for those who are hoping for Miami to do well this year, and for those hoping to see if Tua can read or not, and that is leverage. And leverage is a force multiplier. You know, the whole thing when you're in high school, you got the rock and the stick, and it's the fulcrum, and a guy who's weak can lift something 10 times his strength because of the stick, because it's a force multiplier. So you have these blockers, and they're able to do something, and the skill, talent, the speed, the threat of those skill talent creates a leverage to, like, if the defense was a rock, to lift that defense and push it farther and farther away from the line of scrimmage and make it thinner so the offense can operate with less hassles. An offensive line that's not a great blocker, if there's less guys near to the line of scrimmage, the blitz calls become easier. The diagnose of how they're going to attack a team becomes easier. There's complications, but I don't want to get into that. So we had Waddle, we had Hill, and they created leverage. I talked about game-changing leverage when we signed Hill, and you could see that. But as the season went on, injuries and the teams kind of figuring us out, that leverage began to shrink. Now, obviously, when Achane was popping off with the run game, that was an extra set of leverage. But when you add in OBJ, and even more so, Jonnu Smith, you see people talking about the rack of Jonnu Smith, the run after the catch. It's important, but the rack comes from the leverage he creates. And there's a lot of stuff. While I agree the rack is an important part of Jonnu Smith's game, his physicality, and I'm going to show you that in some video, what teams were doing to us and how you can. I kind of covered some of this in the live, but I'm going to add some other things and just be a little bit more descriptive. And also, not everybody watched the live, so you should. So his physicality alters the way defenses will play us, because 5'8" and 5'10" Hill is totally different than, 6'5", 250 Jonnu Smith. And so OBJ and Jonnu, along with Hill, Waddle, Achane, it's going to create a different kind of leverage. But when you have a tight end who creates the kind of leverage that Jonnu Smith can create, I'm going to show you some pretty interesting stuff. It alters things because it's buckling the heart of the defense. And the center out is always the most important thing. The pass rush inside between the tackles in the A and B gap is the most potent. It's not the outside. All that plays a part. But when you got Jonnu Smith, who can come up to the line of scrimmage, inside inline blocking and then go out for routes, or you can play him out in a stretched out role, all that stuff, though, affects the interior. And when you add the rest of the guys in with what leverage they create, I'm going to show you the numbers compiled together. It puts a lot of problems on defenses. And this is going to allow Tua more opportunities to have progressions. And I'm going to show you a series of stats. A commenter, Chris, I always talk with, we either totally agree or we're in debate. And he drove me to show you to look for some stats. And you're going to see some mitigating circumstances that these three stats, if you watch them and you see how we're doing, it's going to tell us a lot about our chances in 2024. So that's it, Savvy guys. I don't know how long this is going to go, and I'm trying to make it as quick as possible. But you guys, I appreciate all that you do. I love to do this thing. I love to do the research. And you guys make it happen. Like, subscribes. You know the deal is this YouTube thing does not happen without you guys. So I want to give you a shout out and a shout out to Ace Per Head. Without the two of you, this show ain't going down. Ace Per Head's betting software is the premier white label platform for bookies to manage their players and grow their sportsbook operation. Click the link in the description below to get set up in minutes. Ask for the Curtis promo and get a special introductory discount. In my members thing, I did a breakdown of PFF's true pass set grading. And Chris Kaufman did an unbelievable job showing how he did worse in 14 years. Some people kind of understand what that means and some people don't. And I tell you the truth, going back over it, I got a little bit of a schooling where we dialed it in. But I want to give a basic overlay, and I'm going to tie that into these critical stats that Chris drove me to look into. So, screens, rollouts, throws later than 4 seconds or shorter than 4 seconds, and 3-man rush is not counted in PFF's true pass set grading. It really dials into when you're asked to do your job without protection, how well you do. And in this article, I'll put the link below. You can check. It's a really good article. There's a lot to be learned in there, and there's a lot of things I can attach to this. But it says if a team is saddled with an offensive line that is devoid of talent, they should run play action, make use of screens and rollouts, and get the ball out quickly. And I've said this a couple of times, that these are the three ways that teams mitigate pass rush. And the reason you mitigate pass rush is because if the pass rush wasn't there, if you were totally fine with your blocking, you wouldn't need to mitigate it. So when you mitigate it, it says that the OC is saying, hey, we got to help the guys on the block in the blocking unit out. Now, one thing I didn't put in here that I would have put in there is you add extra blockers, and that's my blockers per pass. So I want to get into this little graphic that I designed, and these are the three major topics, headings, statistical headings, to say if you want to mitigate unwanted pass rush. And Miami was the only team in the NFL to be top 5 in all three of these categories. And regardless of what you say about Tua, this says that Mike McDaniel was concerned about the pressure. And obviously, it was loads of injuries. So if you look, you see, I mean, you have Jags and Pats and Titans. They're in 2 categories, but not 3. Only Miami was. Screens. They were second at 15%. We didn't run a lot of screens last year. We ran 5%. And we didn't run a lot at the beginning of the season, but it dialed up very heavy towards the end of the season. We went all the way up 3 times the amount of screens we ran last year to 15%. Play actions. The year before, we were 43%, which is so high. Look at here. It's the highest. It would be the highest by far. But we dropped that substantially, but still we're in top 5, number 4. But when you add the 10% and increase in screens, it kind of plays out almost to the same levels. Then a clean time to throw, we were number 1. We dropped our clean time to throw. I think it went up about 2 or 3% maybe. But the actual time was 0.22 faster. And while you might say the time to throw clean is on Tua because he can't read and just working on a skill set, these other 2 would indicate it's more than that. So these 3 stats are very important stats to watch, because if you're not throwing so many screens, if you're dialing down your play action and your clean time to throw is a little bit higher, that means you're able to let routes break open and get guys further into your progressions because you have more guys in routes, and screens are just kind of like throwaway plays unless you're really taking advantage of a blitz that's really high. And so if these things start dropping, and I think they can based on leverage, even though that Connor is gone and Hunt is gone, as long as Tehran is healthy, OBJ and Jonnu, along with Achane and Waddle and Hill, the leverage they're creating, it is vast. And if you go look at the cushion that these guys were given last year and you compile it together, and it's not all a straight line, but it's close. So Jonnu Smith, yes, rack yards are big, but he was number one on his team for cushion. It's 6.6 yards. So he was the guy that the teams were giving the most amount of cushion because they were afraid of him the most, more than everyone else on the team. And that he didn't have a lot of surrounding talent to help accentuate his situation. And you put him, as you can see here, Jonnu, in the Y inline or Y off the ball. That is serious business. And then you look at OBJ. He had 5.3. And Zay Flowers had 7.7, was the most in the league, but that's still pretty high, and it really wasn't a lot of other talent around him. So OBJ is 5.3, Jonnu is 6.6, and you add in Hill, who had 5.8, and Waddle at 6.7. Somebody point out in the live that Jonnu was getting almost as much as Waddle, which is nuts. And then you add Achane with his 4.23 40 speed, who's going to get out there. And this creates a huge level of cushion, like a hammer smashing into sheet metal. It bulges out the flat. So it's going to be very difficult for teams, unless they have great cover corners and really good cover linebackers, to creep up to the line of scrimmage in force. And this is going to open the edges for the run game. It's going to open a little bit for the interior, because if you can see here at the F, sometimes they call it the slot, sometimes they call it the A receiver, the F receiver, But if you get him playing inside, which is really where he's at his best. You got OBJ to Z out on the edge, who's a pretty good blocker. You got Waddle at the X. He's the main press guy. And then you got Jonnu and Hill. Hill goes into motion. He can motion to the same side as Jonnu and OBJ. And when you consider the leverage that Jonnu creates, you get a full route tree of Hill, and that is scary. There's so many route combos. You can't go into all of it. And then even if you locate all that talent over there, you still got Waddle, who's going to drive off the safety, drive off the corner, and then you got Achane, who can flood to that side, and you got a linebacker who's going to have to keep pace. And I think only Bobby Wagner or what's the kid? I can't forget the kid's name. Not even Wagner. Oh, what's his name? The guy from San Fran, the middle linebacker, is from Panama. He maybe, but 4.23 with space is very scary. There's all kind of things they can do. This is a vast threat to push everything off. And you understand, when you see this alignment on the field, you can't run cover two. It's going to be cover three or man, and it limits what they're able to do, how many blitzes they're able to bring in here. And this is going to create opportunities for Tua to not have to throw the pocket pass and just rely on that. Because last year, we didn't have guys, especially Smythe, out from 3 yards per carry, did a great one. I can't remember the game, but he showed how the corner covered Smythe and another guy, and he just said, hey, I'm going to wait to see where this goes because Smythe is so slow. But you bring Jonnu in, it is a vast upgrade over Smythe. It's in the interior. It's going to create a huge, huge problem, and it's going to allow Tua to go through his reads quickly and to have multiple progressions. Because when you go back and you look at my previous graphic, hold on a second, right here, you've got to figure 15% of our plays were screens. There's no reading opportunity there. 29, almost 30% were play actions, limited guys in routes. Whatever you want to say, when you have 7 guys on 2 or 7 on 3, it makes it very, very difficult, especially when you're getting pressure. So that is 45% of pass plays that really weren't an opportunity. And then you look at our clean throw time. It was designed to get it out quick, and there's very little time to get the ball out quick, especially when you add in the blitz time is 2.08. But now with this leverage and guys are all threats, 1, 2, 3, and 4, Tua should be able to go through progressions, not be so locked into the pocket throw. And even if that's what you want to do, I'm going to show you this little video, and it's going to show, this is last year against the Titans, and you can see Waddle right here. He goes inside. Watch the middle guy drop right back and blow up Waddle. They knew it was coming, and they figured, let's lay the wood on the little guy. Look at this brutal hit. But now, if you've got Jonnu in that spot, they ain't laying that wood on a 250-pound guy, and it's going to pull this whole idea off the table. It's going to make them more tentative. And it's going to allow so many more opportunities, because if you do those jet sweeps and it's not Hill or Waddle, it's a 250-pound guy, it changes what happens. It takes the brutality off your smaller receivers and makes these guys a little bit more nervous to keep going so light, because you need to make sure that your 190-pound cornerback's not trying to tackle 250-pound Jonnu Smith. So there is a lot to be had going forward with the leverage that's being created. And if you go through the whole list here, what did I do with it? You'll see that, what did I do with that? If you add up all the leverage created, 6.7, 5.8, 6.6, 5.3, there's nobody else in the league creating this leverage. And when you add Waddle and Hill, will Jonnu even get more leverage, cushion? Will OBJ get even more? And then you add Achane on top of that. This can alleviate tons of failings in this offensive line, and especially when you add in a more mobile Tua. Now, I'm not saying it's going to, because there's certain situations in bad weather, defenses that are really stacked as far as their cover guys that get the clock up and force the protection, games where, you know what, hey, you're on the road and maybe communication isn't so great. It can put this in stress. But you're clearly going to move your meter up from blowing out average teams to maybe blowing out above average teams, and really pressing the better teams in more conducive environments. We'll still see what happens in these non-conducive environments, but man, there is a possibility here. I prefer the more conventional mean. I think it's very finicky, because if some guy gets injured, and again, if you're not in the right spot, but I don't think there's any way you can say that this can't cause problems. And I think as long as Tehran stays healthy and his offensive line can do okay, I think you can get your best evaluation for Tua as far as his reading this year. Because previously, it just wasn't good because of all the conservative calls with screens and play actions and multiple guys staying in the block and in a quick throw. This is a true opportunity for Tua to prove that he's a guy who can read. He's a guy that when you give him the weapons, despite the quick pressure, that his arm, not like Marino, but in this similar vein, can get the ball out and go through his progressions and kind of see things. Again, we got to see if McDaniel does some adjustments as far as getting to the line of scrimmage early and calling audibles. And we're not just relying on scheme mismatches. It'll be very interesting to see. But I do think there is a possibility, despite me being more conventional, conservative, old-fashioned kind of guy. So, guys, I would definitely focus on how important Jonnu is. And the rack is really important, if you know what I mean. And but the ability to create cushion, the physicality, and having it inside. And if you notice, I said in a live too, that in the combine, the first time ever, cornerbacks were lining up on tight ends to see how the tight ends matched up against corners, because that's what defenses are doing. They're coming out extraordinarily light. And if you got a corner who can match up against a tight end and still stay light, it's a huge advantage. Conversely, if that tight end can beat the corner, that's going to put a lot of pressures on what these new defenses want to do. And I think Jonnu is the guy. Not a perfect player, but man, what an upgrade. So anyway, I'd be excited. Hope you enjoyed. Be well. Go Phins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.